Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. You guys, Dr. Ann and I are here today, and we're going to have a very open, raw, and I feel like even vulnerable conversation because this is something that I I know I've personally struggled with in the past. This is something I still struggle with at times, to be honest with you. And it's something that I have to be very active and mindful towards. And this is something that I know every single one of my clients struggle with. And I'm sure that many of you struggle with as well. And we're going to be talking about disordered eating and everything in between. And I'm going to let you kick this off because I would love for you to maybe give a definition because when Ann and I were kind of talking off camera, we were talking about the fact that so many people, and again, I struggled with this, is you may not necessarily have a quote unquote eating disorder, but that doesn't mean that you don't have disordered eating, right? And so I would love for you to kind of elaborate on that a little bit.
Right. So, I mean, the basic definition of disordered eating is restrictive eating, compulsive eating, or irregular or inflexible eating patterns. Dieting is actually one of the most common forms of disordered eating. I just want to put that plug in there for those of us that like to diet. Um, and and because we live in a diet heavy culture, that means that a lot of people are actually engaged in various diet disordered eating patterns and don't even realize this. And then, anything that we're doing that we're not aware of that is unhealthy for us has the potential of actually getting much more compulsive and much more ingrained. And so I want to talk about what I see when it comes to food. And I have also struggled with disordered eating, had an actual eating disorder for a few different ones for a big chunk of my early life. And disordered exercise as well. And so I want to
Mm.
talk about what kind of discriminates between the two. So I want to start first by talking about eating in general on a continuum. So when we are using food appropriately, ironically, we can use food to cope. That's actually a relatively common thing that we do as human beings. We have a bad day, we come home, we have a scoop of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Break up, same thing. It's ice cream. Usually that's a comfort food for a lot of us. Um, we're angry after work. We might grab some chips to snack on as we're making dinner. And none of that inherently is bad for us. The issue that we get into that moves into the realm of more disordered eating, especially when it comes to our feelings, is when initially we may have a bad day or a rough moment and we might grab something that's really soothing or comforting for us. And then what happens over time is that we keep finding more and more excuses to do the same thing. So one of the things that I like to tell everybody about is numbing. We all numb. Okay. So we see it all the time. People on their phones, you can't walk into a store without hordes of people on their phone crossing the crosswalk, not even looking to see if cars are coming anymore because they're so focused and obsessed with their phone. Well, that is a form of numbing that many of us are either engaged in or we witness on a very frequent basis. We actually do the same thing with food. On some level, we'll sit and we'll binge watch Netflix and eat popcorn and candy until maybe our stomach hurts a little bit. We do that once and that is one thing. But what happens over time with numbing in particular, because what numbing is essentially I am not being mindful of identifying my feelings and then unpacking it. And so I'm going to use something else to kind of hold the tide, if you will. It doesn't actually make the feelings better, but it allows me to not focus on the feelings. And so what food does is food gives us a little dopamine rush. And dopamine is that neurotransmitter responsible for pleasure and also addiction. Um, and we get this little dopamine rush, sometimes a little burst of serotonin, and we get the feel good, right? And so then whatever it is that we were stressed about, well, it's still there, but for a moment, at least while I'm eating that food, I feel slightly better. What will happen over time is that as we struggle to regulate our feelings and identify our feelings, that we'll actually turn to food more often. So it becomes not just that I had a bad day or a breakup or had a fight with my boss or with my partner. It becomes now, well, it's Friday. And of course, I need to celebrate because it's Friday. I made it through the week. For those of you that are in that category, I relate to you. Yes, that is the thing. And then it becomes, well, it's Sunday and the week is going to start. And so I might as well have something really yummy to eat. And then It becomes, well, it's the weekend. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday now. And Saturday morning for breakfast, we got to go out somewhere special. And and what happens over time is that before we notice it, it becomes then every single day after work, instead of it just being, I'm going to grab maybe a handful of chips or something yummy, I'm grabbing a bag. And that bag doesn't stop. And then we realize that our pants are getting tighter. We're not feeling as good. And then we start, can you guess it, Nicole? We start dieting,
Yeah.
right? So we start cutting calories. And then we do this really obsessive check in and this really obsessive, sometimes exercise routine, food routines. We start giving up foods that we love. We stop eating in typical patterns that are healthy for our life. And we become increasingly more obsessive and more compulsive with it, right? So this is when, and there is some utility to doing some of this for very specific reasons. I'm going to talk about that really quickly, but this is when we're doing things, when we're putting stuff into my, as an example, my fitness pal, and we're doing everything down to the ounce on every single little thing that we're putting in our food, and we're recording every single little bite. I had a single pretzel, I am putting that in there. I had another thing of this and I'm putting that in there. And we're obsessing about trying to meet the calories. And this is where a lot of people will struggle, because invariably we go over our calories, and then what am I going to do? Right. And so we wind up in these really obsessive loop patterns, not just with restrictive eating, but we can also get there because we didn't manage what was happening with our food.
Yep.
Um, and so on this range, so we look at normal eating as being able to be flexible with food, not obsessing over every bite that we eat or the calories that we're consuming, but being able to listen to our body and what it needs. If I need a little bit more today, I'm going to give it a little bit more, but it's not because I'm emotionally hungry for something all the time. It's because I physically need more.
Like, yep.
My body's actually hungry, right? I'm taking care of my body. I'm drinking enough water. I'm getting in good nutrients. I'm doing other things, and that's healthy eating patterns. And ironically, healthy eating patterns doesn't mean that you're not eating sweets or sugar. It just means that there's a place for them, but it's not all the time and consistently. Same
Absolutely.
thing with carbs and some of those comfort foods. And you can have a small scoop of ice cream every day and eat in a very healthy fashion, um, or we can have a pint of ice cream a day and feel more out of control and start craving more of that sugar. Does
Mm.
that make sense?
It does. And what I'm hearing you say right now, it's this black or white mentality. So either I'm doing all of the things perfectly, obsessively to the gram, like you said, or I'm kind of off rails and doing none of the things at all. And this is something that we work heavily with our clients. And I get asked often, Nicole, like, you're right. Like, you just nailed it. I'm either doing everything right or I'm doing nothing at all. How do I live in that gray area? And my response back is always what they don't want to hear is, I'm going to challenge you to spend some time not dieting and actively spending some time not dieting, actively working on your relationship with food, actively giving yourself permission to have more and feel good. And that is so uncomfortable for people to hear. Like, this idea that we're not chasing a lower number on the scale or we're not involved in some form of restriction. I want to make one thing very clear, you guys. When I say actively not dieting, I'm not saying, like Anne would say, a panda, what do you call a trash panda, right? I usually use the reference of eating like an asshole. I'm not saying to give your self permission just to eat whatever you want, however much you want, whenever you want. I'm saying give yourself permission to fuel your body correctly and understand what that looks like, is what I reference when I say actively not dieting. But again, for a lot of people, that is so very uncomfortable, just because toxic diet culture, how we've been brought up, and we think that we constantly have to be living in a form of restriction, chasing a lower number on the scale, whatever the case may be. So I would love to talk, Anne, like, how, like, tools, tips, hacks, like whatever we want to call it, for people to, like, just get more comfortable in a space of giving their body what it needs, opposed to this space of constant restriction.
Yep. So I mentioned this the other day to a client. I got some feedback that was really quite interesting to me, and I think very telling for our culture, because I mentioned actually creating a budget for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I said this to this person, somebody long history of eating disorder, doing much better now, but they said that's a diet. And I said, respectfully, it actually isn't. So I want you to think about food very much like money, in that we understand that we have a paycheck that comes once a month, twice a month, however frequently it comes. I have a set amount of money that I get to spend for the month, and I have to prioritize paying my bills first, and then I maybe save, and then I have extra and I can do whatever I want with the extra, whatever I want. Okay. And so when we look at food through a very, very similar lens, what we're doing is we're prioritizing getting in good quality sources of protein. We're getting in good quality sources of things like fruits and vegetables, good carbohydrates, right? Lots of fiber, that kind of stuff, and then healthy fats. And those are the things that we're kind of filling up the bucket with. And then whatever we have left over, we can have fun with, right? And we can play with some of the carbohydrates, and some of the fats. We can have a donuts every now and then. But there's an idea and a guide that kind of drives us, that I'm not just eating whatever I want whenever I want, but rather I'm prioritizing getting my basic nutritional needs met first, with lots of flavor, lots of color, lots of diversity. I'm not saying that you have to eat chicken and rice every day. We can have lasagna, we can have other things, but I'm prioritizing to get those needs met first and really focusing on that. And then I can have whatever I want past then, within reason, right? So, um, and understanding what your body needs, ironically, sometimes initially will take us looking at what we are consuming by the bite, but I really discourage people from staying there for forever, right? So it is useful and mindful to be, if you're scooping peanut butter into something and you're the spoon licker, I am one of those people. It is useful to put the peanut butter on the thing so that you're getting a good assessment of how much peanut butter you're eating. I talk a lot about peanut butter because I really love it. Um, and that can be really eye-opening to realize that, this the spoon that you're licking has 100 calories of peanut butter on it. Like, that is eye-opening. But we don't want to so obsessively do it the rest of our life that we can never have peanut butter without checking it on the scale first. We just learn, it's just simply about learning the skills and learning to trust what your eyeballs are seeing and what the scale is saying, the food scale, not the weight scale, so that you intuitively understand how to manage your food in a reasonable fashion. And for those of us that didn't learn this growing up, or we've spent so many years dieting that we have gotten away from intuitively listening to our body, we have to do this
Mhm.
sometimes. It's
Checks and
learning
balances.
responsibility. Yes.
I want to dive into this piece of it just a little bit because this is something I get met with so much resistance when I talk about in my content, when I'm doing lives, whatever the case may be. And I talk about tracking our intake, immediate walls go up for people. And I get everything thrown at me, from it's obsessive to it's overwhelming to it's, like you said, it's a diet, it's this. I don't want to live with these, like, quote unquote restrictions. And I want to talk about this because it's something I'm so very passionate about. And I say often, but I truly believe that we track for the short term so we do not have to track for the long term. And I tell people this all the time. I don't want anybody attached to a food scale or a tracking app for the rest of their life. It's not a lifestyle, it's a prison sentence. But there is a time and space that I feel like, honestly, every single person on this planet, and when I say every single person, you guys, I'm speaking to the normal average, I'm not speaking to somebody who suffers from an eating disorder. I want to make that very clear because I know that's a completely different ballgame. I'm not qualified to help with. Dr. Han absolutely is. I'm not. I'm speaking to the everyday average person who has probably some disordered thoughts in and around food, to who's struggling with even adopting this concept, who just has walls up against it. And again, we do it for the short term so we don't do it for long term, because this is going to teach us not just how to lose the weight, but how to lose the weight and keep it off long term. This is going to teach us, like Anne said, the portion sizes and amounts, and it's going to teach and educate you on how to eat all of the foods that you love and see success. And the chances of it actually being sustainable at that point are 10 times higher, right? When you're not like following the restrictions in and around carnivore or keto or paleo or insert whatever, cookie cutter approach that there is out there. When you truly understand how to eat all of your favorite foods, the chances of you sustaining that are just like, life just becomes so much better at that point, right? And
Yes.
people tell me all the time, and it's like, I want to challenge these mentality of, well, it's obsessive, right? And I'm like, well, it's like Ann said, it's no different than budgeting your bank account. Would you walk up to your friend that was budgeting her bank account and say that's obsessive? No, but it's the way of which you view it. And for our clients, really tracking is in a space of addition, to be honest with you. This shows you how to give your body more, opposed to, and I think people view it as a space of restriction. But I'm over here with this mindset of, people are like, it's obsessive, it's too disciplined. And I'm over here like, well, discipline equals freedom in my mind, because while you're on your fifth round of carnivore and you're munching on your stick of butter, I'm eating donuts if I want to eat donuts and I still have a body I love, right? And so this gives me the flexibility and freedom to eat everything. There's no restriction in my diet. Now, that doesn't, when I say there's no restriction, doesn't mean that I eat like a 2-year-old toddler. You know, like she said, like 85+% whole food sources for me, but that leaves me the flexibility and freedom. If I want a donut, I eat a donut. If I want a cookie, I eat a cookie. There's just nothing off limits, and I treat myself daily. And that's not to say though, you guys as well, like obviously there's different phases of your nutrition. You have times where calories are a bit higher and you have more flexibility. You have time where calories are a little bit lower in dieting phases, and you may not have as much flexibility. But there goes to show, when you understand the concept in and around tracking and macros and all of this, is why we speak so passionately to this concept, that even when you are quote unquote dieting and calories may be a little bit lower, that doesn't mean that it's miserable. That doesn't mean that you can't have the things that you still love, right? And so I really want to bring this up because tracking, just, it's still one of those topics to this day that is still really taboo for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think sadly what happens is that once people talk about tracking, what they hear is every other single diet that insisted upon that. And what they are likely experiencing is a lot of anxiety because they had ventured into a land of highly disordered eating in doing that. And so what I would envision and what I see a lot in my office is a lot of people have high degrees of anxiety. And sometimes where I start with people is I'm like, you know what? Then don't worry about tracking the calories. Like I've had people that have memorized the calories to the, you know, to like all favorite foods on the planet and how many calories a single fry from McDonald's has. Um, that may not be useful if you're super obsessive or you've had that history and that background and you're trying to untether that. And so what it might look like for you, and there are other apps, Recovery Record is one that does eating disorder stuff, where you're simply tracking the food that you eat in the portion sizes that is what is considered a serving size. So I'm having a fruit that is roughly this size. I'm having 3 ounces of meat that is, you know, I have to get in 5 of these during the day. And some people find that a bit more useful and a way of actually moving into this. But ultimately, even when people come in with eating disorders, we do that.
Yep.
We do that with people. Dietitians will do that. They ease them into it. And isn't because it's obsessive. It is because we have to understand what it is that we are consuming in order to make change.
Yep.
If you just think that we're going to start day one with intuitive eating and get to where it is that you want to go, you would have already gotten there.
1,000%.
So we are going to have to do some different skills, and we're going to have to challenge this notion that you're a failure if you go over calories or under calories or didn't get enough of this in, and only it's just simply data. That's all it is, like your bank account, right? If we're not managing money well and we're constantly going into the red every month, financial planners will tell you, take a look at your bank every morning and your bank every year. See what's going on, see where your money's going, see what's taking funds out. You might have accounts that you don't realize that are you're still paying on, right? And so you don't do this the rest of your life. That is not the plan. That is obsessive compulsive living. We do this for a very short time for the means to the end, right? So that I get a good handle on where it is that my money's going and how that, you know, if we're going to use the example of a latte, which I think we can use financially and calorie wise, if I drink a latte a day, I understand that over the course of a week, it's going to add up to this number of calories. Over the course of the month, it's going to add up to this number of calories. Same thing with budget, right? If I have a latte, what is the going rate on lattes at
Like
Starbucks? Like
$10, I swear. Like $10 a latte. It's insane.
a lot. It's a lot, right? But if I do that every single day, it seems like, well, that's than $10. It's not that big of a deal. But over a week, that's $70, right? Like, and suddenly you understand that in the course of a given month, that one latte every single week is a really small car payment.
Yep.
And that's an opportunity to ask yourself, is that where I want my money to go? You know, so in the course of a year, if we're looking at simply at financial budgeting, I could take a nice vacation with those lattes. Do I want to go somewhere, or maybe, you know, a mediocre vacation with the lattes?
Right.
But like, do I want to go somewhere and enjoy that money differently? And that's actually what we have to learn around food. Ironically, I would say the same thing for people, and I want to brush on this really quickly because this does actually get into disordered eating, about compulsive exercise. And
Mm-hmm.
this is probably a whole, we could do a completely different podcast
Podcast. Yeah, I
episode on
agree.
this. And I used to be a compulsive exerciser. I used to exercise for hours a day and go to swim practice and do all the things and sit ups in my sleep and waking up in the middle of the night. Like it was nuts. I had an official eating disorder and that was a part of it. Um, and with compulsive exercise, there's a ton of dread that actually goes into exercising. Exercising loses its fun, it loses its joy. And when I hear people that come into my office and I'm like, if you're doing exercise to lose weight, you're doing it wrong. And if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And they're like, why do you do it then? And I'm like, all right, we got to start there. Like, so exercise is important for us to keep our bodies strong. It is important for us to keep our bodies fit and healthy so we can do things. I've got a granddaughter. I get to run around and play with her and get on the ground, and she is not going to outrun me until she's maybe a little bit older. Like my 15-year-old sons can outrun me now, but I can put up a good fight. Um, and the point of that is that I get to use my body in a way that's adaptive. And I've certainly aged and I've gotten injured, and other things have happened, and not everything has always worked the way that I want it to as we get older. But the point of it is that we exercise to keep ourselves in shape, not just physically, but so that we can do the things that we want to do long term. And if we're exercising and we're hating it, or we're exercising, it becomes a thing that we dread every single week, we're doing it wrong. And in some of what we've got to learn how to do, and one of the ways that we back our ways out of compulsivity with exercise, is we've got to learn how to pay attention to other things when we're exercising. So when I used to run as an example, and all I could think about is getting to the end of the run so that I could stop finally, I had to start learning how to pay attention and go a little bit slower, listen to my body a little bit more, but pay attention to the things that I liked in my environment, listening to the birds, smelling the air, waving to neighbors, encouraging other runners that looked like they were struggling just as much as I was, um, and making games up, trying to beat the person that was in front of me. They didn't know that they were in a race with me. I always found that really successful. I won a lot of those races. Yay me. But we have to bring joy to things if we're doing them, because if we're not bringing joy to things and we're not being intentional about the reason behind it is to actually get fit and have fun, then we're going to be in a place where we're miserable, and it is not long term. We cannot sustain that over the long haul. That's why diets don't work, because we're miserable doing them. We don't like eating sticks of butter and steak all the time. Like, we might start initially and go, this is amazing. I've never felt so good. My skin's so clear. But I'll tell you what, after 1, 2, 3, 6 months, we talk to the same people and they're missing things. They're missing things like pasta. They're missing things like cake and bread and muffins. And they don't feel like they have permission to go back there. And that's what promotes some of this binging that we're seeing. That promotes this all or nothing thinking.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about, and I'm sure you see this. I mean, I see it day in and day out, and it's something we work with all of our clients with, but this idea that we assign emotion to food, because this is something that people struggle with often. And when I say emotion, I mean this good versus bad mentality of the donut's bad, right? So I shouldn't eat the donut. And we've talked about this multiple times on other podcasts, but that's what leads to the binge, right? And if you listen to our podcast, you know that this is just something that we both feel very strongly about. So and I bring this up because I truly feel like, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and maybe you disagree with me, but I truly believe the only way that we can really, really tackle this is by understanding how that, let's just use the donut because it's an easy example, how that donut can fit into your day. And the only way you truly understand that is by tracking and understanding what goes into that donut, right? Because I think most people think, I ate the donut, I just completely blew my day. But if you track and you understand intake and macros and all of that, and again, there's ways to ease into this. It's not like you're going to understand this overnight, but I look at a donut and I'm like, well, that's about 6 protein, 15 fat and 40 carb. That is extremely easy to fit into my day if I want to eat a donut. And so instead of looking at the donut going, the donut's bad, I look at the donut and I'm like, okay, well, I've hit my protein. I've hit my fiber goals for the day. 85+% of my day has come from whole food sources. I easily can fit this donut in. I'm gonna eat the donut. And I truly believe that that is really the only way, with the education and awareness from tracking and, being able to see that when you eat the donut, that doesn't necessarily even just mean fat gain, right? Like, you could easily fit that into your day. And I'm not encouraging you to eat donuts daily, but I'm saying it could be something with a healthy diet that you could easily fit into your day daily if you wanted to. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I want to share a somewhat similar side story before I talk a little bit more about this. But when my daughters and I were so blessed and we were so fortunate that we got to go to Europe, and we ate croissants, chocolate croissants, every single day. None of us gained weight. We actually felt wonderful. The flowers in Europe is very different than the flower here in America. And the point of that is that every single day we loved taking the walk to the store. It was, I think, half a mile away, and the walk back, and we got a nice little coffee that was really tiny in this tiny little chocolate croissant, and it was blissful every morning. And the utility of that isn't just being on vacation. It is like people in Europe actually do eat like this. And in America, we're like, you can't do that and be a normal size. You can't do that and actually be fit.
And nobody in Europe's overweight.
You
Like very,
can.
yeah, yeah, you can.
You can. Like you can eat it. And because what we're doing when we say that a food is bad or good, and by the way, our culture does this, and in commercials we do this too, right? I'm so bad because I had this ice cream, or she's so naughty because she had a hamburger from from Burger King. And it's interesting that the moralistic and the worthiness that we place on food. Food is just fuel. That is all it is. Some of it is much more nutritionally dense than others of it, but all of it can have a place. Again, it goes back to calories as a data point. If we look at things like donuts, not as I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'm weak, this is bad for me, but rather this is something that is slightly less nutritionally dense, but I get to enjoy because I have taste buds. And this is the thing that's going to make it work for me. I love donuts. If we love donuts, we got to keep it in. We got to find a way to make peace with it. What I hear that's an aside to this as well, it isn't just even about the donuts, but it's about the experience of binging on the donut that I hear a lot of people struggle with.
Mm.
So it's that black and white thinking. Well, when I've eaten donuts in the past, I've always had at least three, four, six. Okay. And so what they think is that in having a donut, it means that I get to eat six. And when I don't get to eat six, now I'm sad because
Mm.
I didn't get to eat as many, right? So now not only is the donut bad for me, and I can only have it in mass quantities when I've fallen off of my plan, or when I failed, or when I'm cheating, but now I have to actually legitimately grieve the fact that I cannot eat the donut like a trash panda. Donuts, croissants, lattes, they weren't meant to be consumed in mass portion sizes. They were actually meant to be
So it's not even
consumed.
enjoyable if I can't eat six of them, kind of thing.
That's right. Right. And we have to learn how to have a small normal portion size of something and walk away and go, man, that was really tasty. I really enjoy that. And I get to have it maybe tomorrow, or I get to have it next week, or I get to have it a couple weeks from now. But I had what I needed, and that was good. And that fit.
Mm.
And I see people sometimes with the same mentality around alcohol. I'm going to be really good. And I'm not talking about people with drinking problems. I do addiction work as well. Um, that's a slightly different beast to this. I'm talking about people who will go and not drinking, not drinking, not drinking. And then when they go and drink, they're having five or six drinks because I haven't drank all month.
Mhm.
Like if that's your mentality for not drinking all month, then have the one drink a week,
Yeah.
because that's gonna net better for you in the long haul and probably make you feel less horrible than if you have five or six in one setting.
Yeah. And I want to kind of inject something in here as well. And again, I'm not speaking, I understand people with like what Anne said, a mentality of like, if I can't have six, then I don't want any at all. Like I understand there are people that struggle with that, but I just want to inject when you start, and this is obviously just from what I do, you start fueling your body correctly. I promise you the need to want six donuts is going to dramatically decrease. And I want to inject that because I see people like all the time. It's like, well, I'm addicted to sugar. And I'm like, I was like, but I guarantee, and I look at food logs, right? And 80+% of your day is coming from processed foods, and there's no protein, there's no fiber, there's really no whole foods. The second that swaps from 80% processed to 80% whole foods, that need to, like, honestly, I can promise you guys, is going to dramatically decrease. And I just want to inject that because there are so many ways to combat this. And I think a lot of times we just like, I eat six donuts and therefore I have, a disordered relationship with food and whatnot. But when you kind of flop that and you can start eating more whole foods, like it does a lot of the heavy lifting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I see Anne shaking her head. So I just want to inject that. Like if this is something you struggle with and you're going, damn, they just nailed this and then they just nailed this and they just nailed this. I would challenge you, if you're not tracking at all, to take a week and get really open and honest with yourself and get a good solid understanding of where you're at. And there's things that you can easily implement, just increasing protein, right? increasing fiber, increasing whole foods. And I promise you, the second that happens, your need to want 6 donuts really will. And I know you're probably like, oh, sure, that would be nice to not want. I promise you. I promise you that like there's small tweaks we can make.
Right. And so, in some of what you're talking about, when people say that they're addicted, and I want to kind of notice this, there's a difference between a physiological addiction, and the basal dopamine output of even chocolate is relatively small in comparison to something else like nicotine or heroin or right or even marijuana. And so, really, what happens is that we get much more psychologically addicted,
Mm.
and we get addicted to our body's response to the surge of dopamine. So when I'm eating 6 donuts and I'm getting all that sugar, I'm having too much, right? And that and that is where we're more in that emotional addiction place, because I'm wanting my body's response, that dopamine spike, to take away some of the edge of what I'm experiencing that I'm struggling to rest in. And I want to kind of echo what you were saying about getting good fuel sources. I think that one of the most unsung heroes, outside of protein, for managing cravings is healthy fats.
Oh, 1000%.
And people are so allergic to fats. We had that big push on low fat. I don't remember what decade that was. Was it the 90s? It was some decade that I was alive in and much younger,
It was
where
90s. Yeah.
it was like everything was low fat. Everything was low fat, right? And that, like, the American Heart Association, and all this, and they were telling us things like eat low fat. Well, we wound up actually eating a lot more processed foods because we were eliminating the fats that were in the foods that actually created not just flavor but satiety. And so when we actually consume healthy fats, we get physiological satiety. And this is how we're going to manage and identify the difference between my, actual physical hunger and nutritional hunger and emotional hunger. And that can make or break sometimes this journey that we're on.
1000%. Fats are also, ladies, particularly for my babes going through menopause, and that's the majority of our audience, they're hormone support. And we're
Mhm.
starting to decline as we reach menopause. Menopause is hormone deficiency. And so anything that you can do to help, aid in hormone support it's crucial for you. And so with that being said, as hormones start to become downregulated or not optimized, however you want to word that, it throws off hunger cues. It throws off the way that your body responds. There's just so many things that go into that. And I do feel like I thought you were going to say whole foods fiber, but bringing up, healthy fats here. I mean, fats are extremely
Yeah.
satiating because they're just more calorically dense. And so understanding how to implement those it's key.
Yeah. And ironically, I have yet to meet someone who's afraid of fiber. It's always the fat.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they struggle to get enough fiber in, not necessarily that they're afraid
Yes.
of it, but
Yes.
it's just, but yes, it is because, fats get a bad rap because they are a bit more calorically dense, but it's, it's not the fat itself. Again, that's just a different podcast for a different day. It's total calories equated, right? And so understanding how to fit those into your day, as we talk about, again, this is why we track and we understand what goes into our food and all of that. Oh, that was good. Anything else, Anne, that you can think about that you want to bring up here? Because I know we've kind of bounced around from different topic to different topic when it comes to just disordered eating in general.
Yes. So I think if you are finding yourself in a place and space where you realize that you were starting to become a lot more obsessive with things, you're struggling to, like, you're really chronic tracking and for too long. And I would say too long, meaning more than a couple months, where you're obsessively starting to track food, or obsessively, like, you're getting up consistently and you're exercising every day and feeling really burnt out and wanting to take a break and almost crying as you're working out. That one of the things that we can do to start shaping some of these behaviors is just giving yourself permission to be a little bit more flexible on things, not recording some stuff, not necessarily everything, but like, let's leave off dinner. We can have a pretty standard dinner. I don't have to weigh stuff on a food scale. We can start small with this. Same thing with exercise, that if you find yourself feeling like you got to be at the gym every single day, shave off 5 minutes a couple times. Give yourself permission to go to the sauna or do some yoga or do some really slow stretches. You will not die. And I want you to look at it, instead of, I'm doing this so I don't become even increasingly more compulsive, like, I'm doing this so that I learn self-compassion, I learn grace, and I learn how to be flexible, and that I can be okay doing some of these things. And if you're struggling with that, then by all means, please reach out for some help, because no one deserves or nor needs to be in a place, your body is not benefiting from either consistent exercise that's just wearing down the muscles and not giving the time to rebuild, as well as obsessive eating, um, and obsessive calorie counting or any of that stuff. It really doesn't serve us long term, and really distracts from our life and the things that otherwise we could be doing, the relationships we could be having, the play, the fun,
Mm.
um, the food that we could be consuming. And I would even invite you that if you are saying things like, today's my cheat day, or that's my bad food day, or I had, my cheat meal, let's eliminate that language. That's not serving us. I had a good meal. That's it. I had
That's
a good meal. This was my, and I do a good meal once a week. I go out with my husband for dinner and I have what I want, and I don't obsess about it. That's really healthy for us as individuals. I don't do it every single night of the week.
Oh, yeah, that was good. Anything else, Anne, that you can think about that you want to bring up here? Because I know we've kind of bounced around from different topic to different topic when it comes to just disordered eating in general.
Yes. So I think if you are finding yourself in a place and space where you realize that you were starting to become a lot more obsessive with things, you're struggling to, like, you're really chronic tracking and for too long. And I would say too long, meaning more than a couple months, where you're obsessively starting to track food, or obsessively, like, you're getting up consistently and you're exercising every day and feeling really burnt out and wanting to take a break and almost crying as you're working out. That one of the things that we can do to start shaping some of these behaviors is just giving yourself permission to be a little bit more flexible on things, not recording some stuff, not necessarily everything, but like, let's leave off dinner. We can have a pretty standard dinner. I don't have to weigh stuff on a food scale. We can start small with this. Same thing with exercise, that if you find yourself feeling like you got to be at the gym every single day, shave off 5 minutes a couple times. Give yourself permission to go to the sauna or do some yoga or do some really slow stretches. You will not die. And I want you to look at it, instead of, I'm doing this so I don't become even increasingly more compulsive, like, I'm doing this so that I learn self-compassion, I learn grace, and I learn how to be flexible, and that I can be okay doing some of these things. And if you're struggling with that, then by all means, please reach out for some help, because no one deserves or nor needs to be in a place. Your body is not benefiting from either consistent exercise that's just wearing down the muscles and not giving the time to rebuild, as well as obsessive eating, um, and obsessive calorie counting or any of that stuff. It really doesn't serve us long term, and really distracts from our life and the things that otherwise we could be doing, the relationships we could be having, the play, the fun,
Mm.
um, the food that we could be consuming. And I would even invite you that if you are saying things like, today's my cheat day, or that's my bad food day, or I had, my cheat meal, let's eliminate that language. That's not serving us. I had a good meal. That's it. I had
That's
a good meal. This was my, and I do a good meal once a week. I go out with my husband for dinner and I have what I want, and I don't obsess about it. That's really healthy for us as individuals. I don't do it every single night of the week. Nicole, I'm sure you're the same. You don't do it every single night of the week, but having moments during the week where you just let yourself be a human being and have fun and just eat what's in front of you, go for it. Have an appetizer where you don't know what's in it.
yeah.
You're not going to die. Um, and give yourself permission to not step on the scale the next morning. And that isn't because you gained a ton of weight overnight, but learning how to be flexible, eating a little bit of stuff, enjoying the foods that we're consuming. This is all a part of natural living and having good quality relationships and good quality life.
I love that too. And I just want to bring some awareness as well, you guys, and talk just slightly before we sign off here. But I think setting boundaries for yourself is a big piece of this journey. And I just want to talk about, because I know Anne said, this can start with, as we start with, the ice cream that soothes us with a bad breakup. And then it turns into, I made it through the week. And then, before I know it, it's like every single day is something to celebrate for whatever the case may be. It's 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock somewhere, going to go have a couple margaritas. And every single day turns into a celebration of some sort. I think it's really important too, because people ask me all the time, they're like, how, just given I have so many conversations with people, how do you eat the foods? Because I'll show my crumble cookie reviews or the foods that I eat that I truly love. And people ask me like, Nicole, how do you do this and have a body that you have? And I'm like, well, first of all, education is key. I said, but I also have boundaries with myself, you guys. Like, could I eat a crumble cookie every single day? I probably could. But that would obviously, like, I could, but it would take A, the enjoyment out of it when I do want to enjoy it. But B, I think that there's a space of going, okay, there's nothing wrong with just like what Anne said. Once a week, I go out with my husband and I have a meal and I just eat whatever sounds good. It's not the protein to carb ratio. It's not these things. And that allows me the flexibility and freedom to have something A, to look forward to, but B, to stay on track. And I think what people forget, it's what we do the majority of the time, not the minority of the time, right? And so people see these crumble cookie reviews that I do and all of these things, and it's like you don't see the 90+% of the time where my food is very much so whole dense focus and protein focus and fiber and, hitting my goals. So the 90% of the time you're hyper fixating on the 10% when I do these crumble cookie reviews, or I go out and I show these like elaborate meals that I eat and I enjoyed them fully. But I just want to make sure that people understand that it's the majority, not the minority, but having boundaries in place to be able to do that. I mean, would I love to go out every single night and have this elaborate meal with my husband? Yeah, but that's not realistic in me sustaining and maintaining a physique that I feel comfortable in. Right. And so having, and whatever those boundaries look like for you, and maybe this is starting off small as well, right? I typically eat out, and people might like roll their eyes, but this is common, 8 to 10 times a week. I'm going to cut that in half and I'm going to eat out 4 times a week. That's my first boundary that I'm going to set. And then we build upon those. And it's like that snowball effect.
Yep.
You
Yep.
shaking your head. So
Yes. Well, what I was thinking as you were talking is that what you were describing is a lot more like taking a vacation versus cheating on your diet.
mhm.
We go on vacations and ironically, we save up for it, we plan for this, then we go on vacation, we do lots of fun things, and maybe we eat out a little bit more and we enjoy our partners more, we enjoy our kids more, we do fun things, and we're really mindful about the time that we spend. However, even when we're on vacation, there is this idea of I don't have an unlimited amount of money. I'm not going to go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on vacation and throw all caution to the wind. I'm going to be mindful about the choices that I'm making and about how I'm spending my time and my money. Um, but I'm having fun. I'm not being bad. I'm having fun, right? I'm living life and enjoying the people. And that is actually the place that food's supposed to be. You are not failing because you had some exotic dip and a margarita and a really cheesy entree at a Mexican restaurant. You're just having fun. That's life. And doing it every now and then with a boundary is really, really useful for
Yep.
us. And just allows us to be that flexibility, but the enjoyment of life.
Yep. 1,000%. I don't want to know a life without cookies or an occasional glass of wine. Like I just don't, it just does not, I like the thought of it
No.
makes me like really sad, really, really sad. So I think this has just hopefully been helpful for the listeners. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. And again, I know something both you and I are really, really passionate about given what we do. But thank you guys, or thank you, Anne, for this. It's just been great. And we
That was
look,
awesome.
oh, yeah, it was. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right, you guys. Well, we'll see you in the next episode.
If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.